Hey guys, welcome to another day with Slick, a better you. It's your host Matt. Today I have another guest coming on. I'm really thrilled to have him come on today. He is one of the top reasons why in the 90s Disney had a tremendous hit of films, one on being Beauty and the Beast. And I'm thrilled to have him come on. Before I have him come on, I'm going to introduce this commercial right here that, of course, he played a part of, Beauty and the Beast.
From Walt Disney Pictures, a beautiful young girl pursued by a ruthless villain and surrounded by danger. But now, a brave beast and his magical army will come to the rescue. Together, they'll do whatever it takes to save Belle. It's an incredible adventure you'll never forget. Disney's Beauty and the Beast. Rated G.
Tremendous film. Join me today is Mr. Gary Trousdale, one of the directors on the picture. Let me get him aboard. Hey, Gary.
How you do?
Tremendous having you here. I don't know if you just saw that. I just played a little promo of Beauty and the Beast a minute ago.
I did see it. That was the funny ad. They showed all the goofy, all the goofy running around and hitting people.
Yeah, and I got some Disney merchandise with me since I had a Disney man on board. This is an old Disney tape I still have called Condor Man.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
This came out. I don't think he worked on this picture, but this is Belle's Tales of Friendship.
Did not work on that picture. No.
Okay. And DVD. This is The Rescuers.
Is that The Rescuers, the original one, or Down Under? That's the original one.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I recently, a little while ago, moved, so a lot of my stuff is in storage and at friends' home. But I got a lot of Disney stuff on tape and DVD. And one of the things I got that's rare that was out, I don't know who sold it to me, but I got it through eBay. It was Beauty and the Beast, a work in progress.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Radio City.
So Gary, thanks for coming aboard today. And like I asked all my guests, I wanted to ask you first, how are you and your family doing through this pandemic?
Well, it's as good as can be expected. As good as can be hoped given the situation. Everybody's healthy. One of my sons is a healthcare worker, so he's already been vaccinated, as well as my sister-in-law. So we're starting that. I'm hoping to get vaccinated by the summer. It's just hanging in there. Basically, that's my standard response when people say, "Hey, how's it going?" It's like, well, after 2020, we're just hanging in there. So
that's right. Well, Gary, let me also tell you this. I got a little mystery game for you. The movies that you've done and the year they came out, guess what year I was born? I was born the year when your movies hit.
Oh my gosh. Would that be Beauty and the Beast, or would that be an earlier one?
That would be Beauty and the Beast. I was born I was actually born in July of 91.
Okay.
Beauty came out.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for making me feel ancient.
Yeah, I'll be 30 this year. So
okay.
Yeah. So let's back up a bit though. Where are you from, and what kind of hobbies did you have growing up that kind of made you want to get into animation or directing?
Broadly, I'm from Los Angeles County. More specifically, I'm from La Crescenta, which is like kind of a suburb of Glendale, California.
Right.
It's actually not that far from all the studios, but at the time when I was probably from about 10 years old to like early high school, I wanted to be an architect. I thought that was the way to go. And then in high school, I started failing my math classes spectacularly. So I thought, well, this is not going to work. I'm going to have to figure something else out.
Yeah.
And there was a thing at my high school, Crescenta Valley High, to anybody. There was a thing at my high school. It was like a career day kind of thing, except it spanned 3 different days. And one of the things that they did was they had people from all walks of life, all different professions come in and talk to the kids, the students.
Mhm.
One of them was a student from Cal Arts, California Institute of the Arts, up in Valencia.
Right.
She was a student of the Jules Engel. We called it experimental animation, but the animation program. And she came down and started talking about Cal Arts and animation, and that was what kind of opened my eyes to, oh my God, you can study this. I mean, this is something you can like learn in school. So
Right.
that's what kind of kicked that off. And ever since then, and trying to get into Cal Arts, I had not taken art classes before, and I had to like build a portfolio, and eventually got in. And being a director was not ever on my radar. It was like, I would have been happy to just be one of those monks sitting at a table and illuminating, flipping the paper and drawing, for until I was 75 years old or whatever, whenever they kick you out at Disney.
Right.
I just kind of, I don't want to say fell into it, because I was opinionated and noisy, and I think, I mean, I worked on a couple of features in storyboard, and the directors liked my work enough to keep it in the movies. But generally, I was a pain in the neck to them enough that I was usually one of the first ones to be cycled off, into something else.
Right.
Just like we're just tired of listening to him. Just put him on the next thing. So, when I was in the development department at Disney, we got an assignment to do a theme park animated pre-show, and one thing led to another, and the original directors on it transitioned onto other projects, and Kirk Wise and myself were the only people that knew anything about the project because we had storyboarded it. And they said, okay, you guys are going to direct it. And we were like, oh, okay, I guess, so, they just kind of threw us into it. And that was our first directing gig, was for a project in Epcot Center.
That was Cranium Command.
Cranium Command, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, which is sadly no longer with us.
I was going to ask you to talk about that. You and Kirk seem to have had a good working relationship on a lot of projects, and because normally I know with Disney, the animators work together a lot, and then later on, sometimes they got separated onto other projects, and you and Kirk worked together real well. What was it like working with Kirk?
Kirk is terrific. He's one of the funniest people I know, and I would often say, truthfully, when the two of us were in interviews together, it's like, well, he's the smart one. Talk to him. I'm the funny looking one. But yeah, I mean, we both went to Cal Arts together. He was a couple classes behind mine, but we knew each other from school, and kind of came up through Disney together. Not quite on the same path, because I started in special effects and he started as a cleanup artist, and then he went into a character animation, and I went into storyboard. He eventually made his way to storyboard, and that's where we kind of hooked up again and started working on projects together.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, he and I work together really well. I can't see having done as well as we did, or as I did, without him. Because we would finish each other's sentences. I mean, we were like really connected, and we trusted each other enough that we would split the labor of the projects, because generally we had a short production schedule and a lot to do. So he would handle like the character animators and the cleanup guys, and I would handle the layout and the effects guys. And then we both did storyboard. We both did like dialogue recording and editorial. So, some stuff we were together and some stuff we would split off, and we cause more damage that way.
Yeah. One of the things I admired about you growing up, though, you personally, Gary, was in the interviews I would see you, and I said, who is this cool guy working at Disney with this long ponytail? I mean, I want a ponytail just like his. I heard a rumor you might be growing it back since we're in COVID right now. Is that true?
No, I've been cutting my own hair, which is of varying degrees of success, and depending on if you see me with a hat or not is how well I did on my last cut.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I had that thing for a long time, and after a while, it just your hair, you get older and your hair just starts doing funny stuff, and it just wasn't working for me anymore. So I was shaved head for about 5-6 years.
Wow. So I wanted to ask you. So when you first got into Beauty and the Beast, I know Richard Purdom was the original producer, and the film was really different than what we knew today. It was like really different, and then they approached you and you and Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that process like coming aboard on that? 'Cause I know at the time Jeffrey Katzenberg was in charge, and Roy Disney was there, Peter Snyder, and Don Humm was the producer. What was that process like to come on board? And it's like, well, we're the acting directors, and now we got to do this film that they did, but now it got to be structured and redone. What was that process like of putting the whole movie together from beginning to the end?
Well, when we were first put on it, I mean, we were aware that it was being produced, but it was being produced in London at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The Purdoms, Richard and Jill, they were a husband and wife team,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't quite going the way that the studio brass wanted it to. Don was producing it, and after one of the screenings, and I had seen the screenings as well, and they were really pretty and really slick, but they weren't that exciting. There was no music in it. It was a non-musical version, and somebody described it as an animated masterpiece theater. It was like really elegant and really beautiful, but just like kind of dry.
Right.
And it was Jeffrey Katzenberg that said, "Hey, let's get that Ashman and Menken to do their Little Mermaid magic on this one." And, so however it happened that the Purdoms were let go or left on their own accord or whatever, the studio still wanted to make Beauty and the Beast. I think they had already booked theaters and everything. They had a 3-year running schedule. They just burned a year of it off.
Right.
So we only had 2 years to make it now. Kirk and I got called into our boss's office. We were still in that development department. And we got called in on a Monday morning in early December to Charlie Fink's office.
Right.
He said, "Can you guys be on a plane on Wednesday to New York? You might get to direct Beauty and the Beast." And I thought we were being pranked. I'm looking around for the hidden cameras and what? Because we had just come off of that Cranium Command,
Mm-hmm.
like at the end of October, so it's only been like a month, and we're like kind of settling back into drawing, just the development. So we're drawing Goofy of the Apes, it's like Goofy swinging around with a bunch of gorillas, and that never happened. But I mean, that's what we were doing, and then we get called into Charlie's office, and bam, it was literally like stepping outside and getting caught in a twister, just like open the door and whoosh, away we went, and we landed in New York. And we were on way up on top of the Disney building on I think it was on Park, and there was Howard Ashman, Alan Menken, Roger Allers, Brenda Chapman, Kevin Lima, Chris Sanders, Don Hahn, Kirk, and myself. We were all there, and it was like thrown in, and they said, "Okay, Kirk and Gary are going to be the directors." And yeah, you're right. Jeffrey didn't quite have the confidence in us to make us directors right off the bat. You guys are going to be the acting directors. And our joke was, damn, now we have to act like directors. So
yeah. So,
I mean, we were just sitting around this big conference room and like, okay, And Howard was already like, the songs were already spinning around in his head a little bit. Linda Wolverton was also there, the writer.
Right.
And so he and her were working pretty close. Howard was actually laying out the structure, and Linda, was kind of following his lead. And then we were coming in, and our contributions were like, well, okay, so in the classic Cocteau version from like 1945 or whenever it was, the French version,
Right.
all the castle was magic, and things would just happen. Dishes of food would float to her, and the candles would light as she walked by, and then they would go out. And we said, well, what if we gave those personalities? Instead of all these magic things just kind of floating around, what if they were like little characters? So that was that was our big breakthrough. That was our contribution. So. But and then it was like, okay, so we can have like the major domo be like tightly wound like a clock, and the burning with passion candelabra. It was like that corny, but it worked. So,
man, and it's interesting how they gave y'all that title. It's like it was like, oh, these are directors. No, y'all are the acting directors. Like,
yeah.
That's interesting title there. And you was funny in your interview with Kirk in 2001 or in the 90s when y'all was talking about that, and you said a statement about it was like when you turn the kitchen light and the roaches come on. You're like, what? You talked about that was fun.
Yeah. we weren't the first choice, for the director's job, and we were the ones that got caught. So. Yeah,
they went fishing in their cart y'all. The spotlight.
They caught us. It's like, hey, this is nice and shiny, and away we went.
Yeah. So I know. Well, I'm sure you've seen Howard's documentary. I'm sure you've seen that. Yeah. Ironically, having him come back on board with Alan to work on this movie was very, very good on their part. And unfortunately, he was dying at the time y'all was like working on it. What is your memories of Howard?
We didn't know he was sick at first. When we were first working with him, whether it was his wish or the studio's wish or the combination of the two, they didn't want this information to come out. And for that to be the story and for that to be what everybody focused on. So we didn't know.
Right.
And we were flying back to New York, every week, every 2 weeks, something like that, to work with them, up in upstate New York. And the story that we were being given was like, well, Howard's, he's a big fancy Broadway lyricist and composer, and he doesn't want to travel out here. And so we were given the impression, by the studio, well, it's Howard being fussy, that he just doesn't want to travel.
Right.
And we never got that vibe from Howard, so we said something's up, but we didn't know what until later on when it became pretty apparent, and he announced to us that, yeah, he had AIDS and was going to die.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, we learned so much from him. Just in structuring a musical theater, in what different things, what different songs, what different movements, what different, how characters move around each other, what that means, both practically to an audience and symbolically, how to work with voice talent, how to work with singers, the kinds of notes that you give. And Kirk and I were it was like a master class, of us just watching him and Alan, interact with these Broadway guys that we didn't know Broadway. And that was kind of Kirk and my joke in later films, because we still worked with Alan, but then we were working with Stephen Schwartz on like Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's like our frame of reference is different from these guys. It's like when they're talking, when Alan and Stephen and Howard are talking about, well, it's like Gigi and it's like Oklahoma and it's like Fiddler on the Roof, and Kirk and I are like, oh, you mean it's like Alien? You mean it's like The Dirty Dozen? You mean it's like Terminator? And so we were just like, woo, just different worlds coming together.
Yeah. Wow.
But Howard was one of the things about him was like he got cartoons. He loved
Mm.
cartoons, and he understood us. He understood what made it funny and what made it clever. He wasn't trying to do a Broadway play. He was trying to do a good cartoon, a good animated movie in kind of the mold of a Broadway play.
Right. I've often said this because again, I saw the Howard documentary. I love that movie, as well as Wake and Sleep and Beauty that you all were in. And actually, a few years ago, a friend of mine took me to Howard's grave. I took a picture of his tomb and everything. I've often said that had there been some way to save him, how films or Disney, how Howard would have kept going if he had still been here today, ironically. Yeah. So what is your memories of working with Jeffrey Katzenberg? I know when he came in, he took Disney to a new direction, him and Michael Eisner.
Yeah. When he first came in, I was working on storyboard on Oliver and Company, so I didn't interact with him that much. I would see him every so often,
right?
But the directors of that were the one. Like George Scribner was the director, and he was the one who really had to interact with and bear the brunt of Jeffrey, because Jeffrey could be intense. I mean, he could be
yeah,
he could be intense. He got less and less hair over the years, until the end he was like almost done. I mean, he could be a really nice guy, but he could also be, I mean, like really, really out there. One of the things though that I really, really appreciated working with him as an executive and as a boss was he would look at our films, when we do like test screenings and things like that, preliminary screenings. And he'd look at it and he'd have a problem with something. He's like, guys, this isn't working. You got to do this and this and this and this. And he'd tell us, like 8 different ways to fix, one problem.
Right.
And I think we learned it from Rob Minkoff, who kind of discerned this. He said, Jeffrey doesn't care if you use his solution. He just cares that you fix the problem. He's going to throw out solutions that he thinks you might use, but he doesn't care if you use them or not. He just wants you to fix the problem. And that was invaluable information, because a lot of bosses, a lot of executives, when they say, this is wrong, you got to fix it, do this, they want you to do that. And I've had bosses that if you take the Jeffrey mold and go, okay, he's just got a problem, we'll just fix this, and you bring it back and it's not the fix that was asked for, they go, I thought we talked about this. I thought we said you were going to. It's like, oh, okay. Jeffrey wasn't like that. He was a hard ass, but he was fair.
Right. So, that I remember. I don't remember who I was talking to about this, because I've had a couple of people from Disney on my show, my last show. But looking at the making of the movies, like I do, because I'm a big Disney geek. I got a friend who whenever he has a Disney question, he always asks. He always calls me and be like, "When did this come out? Who was on this?" I am, I love Disney. Yeah. But I remember talking with some, I can't remember who it was. I remember saying, watching how Jeffrey would do that, he reminded. It felt like, in a way, it was like being in, like, when you're in school and you present something to your professor, and they tell you they're not feeling it, and they tell you how to go back and do it. He reminded me a bit of my professor. I had a professor when I took photography, and we set up the shot. Everything was good. I was into it, and I showed it to him, and he went, not feeling it. No, this can be more. Move this, dude. And I remember thinking, like, this is like Disney back when they was working with Jeffrey, and even though it's not the same, but I guess that's everywhere you work at. You have a boss who you do something and they want you to try to fix it. Well, because I've always thought that working at Disney growing up in the 90s and even later on, I always felt like making movies were simple, and they're kind of not. It is a work in progress.
I mean, there's hundred. Literally, I think we had like 400 some people working on it. So that's 400 moving pieces right there. That you've got to manage, and everybody's everybody's a professional, and everybody's probably the best at what they do, but everybody's got like maybe a slightly different take on what to do. So
Right.
You know, they come to us and ask, you know, what do you think too? And sometimes we have to say, no, do it another way.
Right.
That Kirk and I sometimes saw our job is just like kind of running alongside, you know, a truck with no driver and like kind of pushing it back onto the road so it doesn't just like careen off somewhere. It's like, just keep it on the road. Just keep it. It's rolling and you can't stop it, but just make sure it doesn't crash into something.
Yeah. So, Gary, what was your reaction when you found out Beauty and the Beast was nominated for an Oscar or Golden Globe? I mean, that movie took off when it was released and won so many nominations, and Alan won awards as well. I mean, what was your reaction when you found out how big that movie became?
Okay. I have to say it wasn't like totally out of the blue, because at that time there was a kind of a buzz. You know, people were talking about, oh, this is really something. This is like no animated film we've ever seen. You know, so there was people were talking about it like maybe it could win some awards, and we're like, go on, really? You know, but the seed had been planted.
Mm-hmm.
And it was our art director, Brian McEntee, who said, guys, early on, you know, like we're in production still. And he goes, guys, this movie's going to make $100 million. And we were like, no, get out of here, because no animated movie had made that much money before.
Right.
Oliver and Company made like 53, and that was considered a wild success. And then Little Mermaid made like 86, and it was like, oh my God, you know, this is like unprecedented. But we didn't think we thought, God, if we're lucky, we'll make Little Mermaid numbers. And Brian said, no, you're going to make $100 million. And, you know, so when it did, you know, of course we're thinking, damn, this is like, people kind of like it, you know, and we're getting like critical reviews, and people are starting to whisper like Golden Globes, Oscars. And we're like, all right. So, you know, when Oscar time came out, and, you know, they're announcing it in California time, like 5 a.m, because it was like 8 a.m. they announced it in New York.
Right.
And so everybody in LA, everybody at the Burbank studios, they're all sitting, you know, in front of the TVs at their homes, you know, in the dark, in their pajamas and their underwear and their bathrobes and all that. And yeah, and it was like really difficult to keep from yelling and wake, because my kids were really little.
Mm-hmm.
Keep from yelling and waking them up. Could not get back to sleep, you know, and so on the way into work, I stopped off at a store and picked up a couple bottles of champagne and a big thing of orange juice, and I got to work, and they had already started, you know. Everybody had the same idea.
Right.
That was an alcohol day for us.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it was kind of numbing, and you know, that day it was like we couldn't believe it, and yeah, I mean, you know, people were telling, oh my God, this is certainly something. And, you know, and that was back when only 5 pictures were nominated for Best Picture. I think it's 10 now. So, you know, we felt we felt pretty good.
Yeah. What do you? Well, I don't know if you've ever been asked this question, but you know, what do you think Walt's reaction would have been if he was still alive?
Boy, I don't know. You know, because I know, I mean, I'm sure you do too, that when Walt was alive, they took a pass at Beauty and the Beast. They tried to make Beauty and the Beast and just couldn't make it go.
Right.
So Walt would be pissed at us because we didn't win an Academy Award like he did for Snow White.
Yeah.
But no, I'm sure he'd be happy, you know, because this was a movie that he wanted to make, and it was finally made. Whether it was, you know, to what he would have in mind or not,
right.
It was, you know, it was his dream too.
Well, I guess I had a little bit of Walt there. I mean, I know Roy was along there, but I understand Joe Grant was a part of it as well, one of the animators from the past.
Yes.
Yeah.
Joe Grant, and for a brief time, Mel Shaw as well. But yeah, Joe was he was doing like concept paintings and concept drawings for us, and then we had Vance Jerry as well, who, when I got to Disney, Vance was like, you know, he's like the grand old man. He was like one of my mentors, and just this guy who'd been around since Lady and the Tramp, and this
Yeah.
master storyteller, and then seeing him and Joe together was really interesting because he had been Joe's assistant, and even after all these years, he was still like kind of subservient to Joe.
Right.
Like, Vance, you don't need to do that. You can draw your own stuff now. Because Joe would come in and go, Vance, I want you to draw this up, and which was like how they used to do things.
Right.
Joe would have an idea and he'd give it to Vance, and Vance would draw it up. But it was Joe's thought, and Vance would just be the hands, and they were still doing that. And I thought, this is like 50 years later. You guys can.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
that touch. Yeah.
It was fascinating to see.
And the one thing I enjoy seeing too is the making of the movie with all you guys in there. Not that I'm calling you old, but you guys so young in there and talking about it and looking at the storyboard and all that. Because as a kid, I used to be fascinated like how they get the because it's not like live action where you can shoot the scene and then edit it and cut. With 2D at the time, and I guess today 2 or 3D. It was on storyboard, and you had to try to envision how it was going to be in the picture. So I always was fascinated, like how that would be, and watching you guys doing the making of it on DVD and going over it. It's like it's fun times. I always get a kick watching that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was that was the thing. I mean, storyboard was a hugely important thing because you get your screen direction and your scene cutting, and going back to Jeffrey Katzenberg, one of the first things he said when he came to Disney, I think it was at the tail end of the Black Cauldron.
Right.
And one of the first things he said after his screening was, "Okay, show me your outtakes." And everybody was like, "We don't have outtakes. We don't. That's not how we work. It's storyboarded. Then we do the scenes based on the storyboard and the layout, and that's it. There is no trim bin."
Right.
Yeah.
And it's ironic, watching Waking and Sleeping Beauty, and I found out, of course, when I heard about Beauty winning, nominated for an Oscar, but then I lost the freaking Silence of the Lambs. I'm like, no, Beauty should have won that year. I mean, no offense to the movie, but I was like, did they not see Gaston get his just due at the end when he went off the bluff and the beast died and came back as a human? I mean, him, Signs of the Lamb, but it won, and but Beauty and the Beast,
it was a tough year. I mean, that was like JFK was that year, and what was it?
The Nick Nolte movie, The Tides of the Pride, I think.
Oh, Prince of Tides.
Yeah.
Prince of Tides. There was a Warren Beatty one. Was it? Wasn't Bugsy? Was it?
Bugsy. That wasn't. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, between JFK and Silence of the Lambs, because we went and saw those before the awards, and we were like, "Ooh, okay, this is how the grown-ups make movies." we're doing this happy little cartoon, and wow, look at this stuff. So, I mean, we had our hopes up, but as we were, because we got to go to the ceremony, and I was sitting next to Peter Schneider, and as we were seeing like the writing and the cinematography and like all these other awards going to Silence of the Lambs, Peter turns to me and goes, "It's over." So we're like, "Oh, no miracle coming?" He's like, "No, you might get music."
Yeah. So prior to that, after that, you and Kirk worked on Hunchback, which was another great picture in the Disney canon. What was that like working on Hunchback?
I mean, it was different. I mean, it was the same in that we had an established story to go from. Beauty and the Beast, there were a number of different versions, so we were free to like tweak it, somewhat. One of the first tweaks that we were aware of from like the 1940s French version that Howard had done was he had compressed all the suitors into Gaston and got rid of Belle's sisters, so it was just, focused on those two. And a number of versions, there's multiple characters. So that was one of the things. But with Hunchback of Notre Dame, based on Victor Hugo's novel, one of the things that we're very aware of was we don't want to screw this up. We don't. Number one, we're doing a Disney cartoon, a Disney family cartoon, and number
Right.
two, we're doing this this piece of French literature that's basically a tragedy. I mean, pretty much everybody dies, and it's pretty
Mhm.
dark. So how are we going to balance this? And that was probably the biggest trick was
Right.
balancing, finding the balance and walking that tightrope. And I've heard a lot of a lot of criticism since, like the gargoyles singing, really, it's like, well, it was a Disney cartoon for crying out loud.
Yeah.
We did it for the kids.
Right.
And to my somewhat happiness, I've met people since then who are like in their 20s and early 30s who said, "Oh, I loved those when I was a kid." It's like, okay, good, we did something right.
Right.
So,
I mean, the gargoyles, of course, and Jason Alexander, the voice of the one, and in a lot of ways, I did feel kind of sad for Quasimodo because he was in love with Esmeralda. Obviously, I mean, she was kind of the one to tell him, you don't have to hide in the bells. You can come out to the public. They're going to like you regardless of your, disability. That's how Don Hahn put it when I interviewed him. Disability. People will like you, and but. In the second one they did, he did get a girl, so I was happy about that.
yeah, I never saw the second one. I've heard though, so
Yeah.
you hear stuff.
So who did you and Kirk report to? Since I know at this point Jeffrey was gone from Disney when y'all was doing Hunchback. Who was y'all boss at this point?
Well, mostly to Peter because he had been kind of promoted up to like the president of animation,
Right.
and then Tom Schumacher had come in.
Right.
So we had Peter and Tom together, and then above them, I guess it was like Joe Roth and Roy Disney, and ultimately Michael Eisner. Because everything, he had his eyes on everything, and it ultimately had to get past Michael Eisner and Roy Disney.
Right.
At the time, they weren't always in agreement, but I mean, we knew, okay, Roy, and he'd said as much. It's my name on the door, so we had to make him happy. One of the things, the song Hellfire, where Frollo sings to the vision of Esmeralda in the fire.
Mhm.
Frankly, we were pretty surprised we got we got that in the movie. But when it was initially storyboarded, it was boarded by Paul and Gaetan Britzi, the brothers from the Paris studio who we brought over, and they were fantastic. But and they went into their room and locked the door for a week, and then they came out with all these boards and absolutely gorgeous. I know they're showing in a gallery in Paris now, but just their work because it's that good.
Yeah.
But Esmeralda was nude, as she's dancing in the flames, and Frollo's going insane. And Roy said, "You're not going to have her naked, are you?" We're like, "No, don't worry, we'll take care of that." So, so yeah, I mean, it went up to the highest levels, and everybody saw it. And yeah, you couldn't get away with much because there were a lot of eyes on it and a lot of very high level eyes.
Yeah. And of course, y'all had some more celebrities again on that. Y'all had Demi Moore and Kevin Kline and the honorable Tony J. Did a fantastic job on that voice as Frollo.
Yeah, he really did.
Yeah. I should have asked this before, and I'll ask about Hunchback. Did you have a favorite song or scene from Beauty and the Beast?
Oh man, weirdly, the song that I like the most. I mean, everybody assumes it's going to be Beauty and the Beast, and the scene of Beauty and the Beast, I think, is probably my favorite. Because all the emotion and the music and the color and the technology of the day, that all came together in that one scene. Because that ballroom scene, before then, nobody had really done anything quite like that. And that was Roger and Brenda thought that one up. They boarded that together, and they said we think the camera should be sweeping around, and my God, it worked great. We didn't have confidence that it would. We had a plan B, that we, if the ballroom crashed, we called it the Ice Capades version, where we'd have just like a circle of light on the floor in a black background, and they would be dancing around like that,
Right.
just like in a spotlight, but no moving background behind them. Fortunately, it didn't come to that, and it worked.
Yeah.
My favorite song, though, just for the song, for the lyrics, for the drive, for the just the energy and the wit, is "Kill the Beast," the one that Gaston sings to the mob.
Everybody likes that song.
I just love that song.
And 50 Freshmen can't be wrong.
Yeah,
Kill
it
the beast.
can't be wrong. It's a screw your courage to the sticking place, and we're like, what? And he goes, guys, that's Shakespeare. I was like, oh, all right, sorry. Oh.
Yeah, that was an ironic song to have, and especially in the Kid Disney movie. You're making a song about killing the beast. About
yeah.
Oh man, yeah, and it wasn't my favorite song, but I had a liking to the whole Gaston scene where they was all at his place, and because he was
the bar.
Yeah, because he was like this Arnold Schwarzenegger. He ate all these eggs and boom, boom, and all the girls were crazy over him. And I'm like, what is so special about this guy with a ponytail who is obsessed with this woman who falls in love with this animal? I mean, come on.
Yeah, that was a fun song.
Yeah.
Which Don called the last of the Red Hot drinking songs because, as sensibilities change, there's not too many songs about getting drunk anymore. So.
Right. So were you and Kirk a part of the scene that got cut, Human Again, that got put back in years later?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, we cut it because originally it was just so long. I think the first version that Howard and Alan did was 9 minutes long, and it's like, oh my god, it was so long. It was a beautiful song, but it just went on and on and on and on, and we storyboarded it, and it was almost became kind of a joke, because there were cutaways as the objects are singing "Tick-tock, the time goes, the day breaks," and there were cutaways to Maurice, who was out searching for Belle. This is before he. No, I guess it was after he had spoken with Gaston. But he's like walking around the forest with his lantern. Belle, where are you, Belle? And we joked, it's like so much time. Literally, the seasons were passing, in the song, and we thought, okay, now we'll have Maurice passing the pyramid of Giza, going, Belle, where are you? And then we'll have him, just like some other great landmark. He's in Machu Picchu, going, Belle, and so we cut it, we cut it until we killed it, and Howard said, forget it, just hell with it. I'm just going to write a new song. So he wrote something there,
right,
and that's what went into the original version, and it worked great. It was a really sweet song. Alan was always bothered by the fact that we couldn't make it work, and when he did the Broadway version of Beauty and the Beast, he figured it out. He had like another year to kind of sit on it and work on it, and we were going so fast at the time, he just couldn't figure it out in time. But Alan worked it out, and he figured it out and made it work. And so he put it in the play, and we went, that works great. and at the time, DVD was still a big thing. I mean, that was still a big market for all the animation studios, because they do a theatrical release and then there'd be a DVD release, and it's not so much now. But at the time, you would do a DVD release, and if you really wanted to push it, you put in added content, you put in bonus features, things like that. So they thought this would be a great way to do like an anniversary with a lost scene. And so we were on Atlantis at the time, when this was coming around. So we were like kind of bouncing back and forth. And at the same time, it was going to be released on IMAX. So a lot of scenes came back to be re-cleaned up.
Right.
the original drawings were literally that big, So there's a specific scene in something there where Belle and the Beast are snowball fighting, right?
Right.
And it's like from the point of view of the little objects, like up on a balcony. So Belle and the Beast are way, way down in the snow.
Yeah.
And the drawings were so tiny that Belle didn't have a face. You couldn't really tell on a regular screen, that she didn't have any features. But when you blew it up to IMAX, instead of her being this big,
right,
on a regular screen, she just had this egg with hair on it. And it was like, ooh, we got to fix that. So a bunch of scenes went back for re-cleaning up. And then there were a couple of scenes that had always bothered us, that we were in such a rush to get it done. It's like, can we redo this one, please? This expression has always just bugged the hell out of me. Can we just, so there were like, I don't know, 3 or 4 different scenes.
Right.
And yeah. So yeah, we were heavy into that. I think John Sanford did a lot of the boarding on it. I don't remember who else. I mean, we had a lot of our original people. So
yeah, I always felt like "Human Again" was a good song for the movie. Especially because I felt like that was a good song for the objects. They had a chance to sing what was in their heart, because we got what Belle and the Beast wanted, what Gaston wanted, but we didn't really hear what they wanted. And ironically, years later, when y'all put it back in, after looking at what Alan did, that was like, oh, they got feelings too. They want to be human again too. They have a goal.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those are Howard's original lyrics, but Alan somehow like recut it and rearranged it and reconfigured it, and he made it work, and we said, okay, let's do this. When they gave us the go ahead, we were happy to do it.
And Lumiere was one of my favorite objects, because he was one heck of a ladies' man. He was a big flirter in that movie. Him and Cosworth. Cosworth was always worried, about the time, and if the Beast was going to find out, they was going to get in trouble. He was like the Beast's little buddy in a way.
Right.
Yeah. How do you think the movie would have went if Belle? Well, I know earlier you said she had a sister, but like if Belle had a sibling in it, or Maurice had a girlfriend. I know at the end they kind of did this thing where him and Mrs. Potts could have been when they was human again, and him and Mrs. Potts would stand next to each other. If he had like a lady in the picture, like how do you think that would have went?
Well, I mean, it wasn't for Maurice. There was never really a version that we could find, or a bigger version of Beauty and the Beast historically, where Belle had more than one parent. It was always just her and her father, and her trying to please her father, and her father trying to please her. The version, I guess they did it in the live action, was like, well, what can I bring you from this? From this voyage that I'm going on? Well, just a single rose, and that's what sets the Beast off in the earlier versions, is
right.
Maurice takes a rose from the Beast's garden, and and he's captured. Yeah, I mean, it would be a different story. It would take a lot of rethinking. So
yeah,
the different siblings, if Belle had sisters, because it was like almost like a Cinderella, thing. She had like these like 2 older sisters who were kind of mean to her, and I don't think they were ugly though. I think they were just like kind of bitchy. And then like really foppy, fancy suitors for them, who didn't pay Belle any attention because she was just plain and liked to read books. So,
yeah.
I mean, Howard, did us a favor by just like cutting those out. It's like, it's a lot of extra stuff that we really don't care about. We really don't need. You want it. And that was probably the argument. It's like, guys, the story is called Beauty and the Beast. It's not Beauty and the Beast and her sisters and some other guys and a bunch of other stuff. It's those 2.
Yeah. Well, I always wondered, if they, I mean, I showing you the tape I got of Belle's Tales of Friendship. 'Cause I know they did like a live action of Belle on Disney Channel with the live action actress. I was going to say, I wonder how it would have been if they did a Beauty and the Beast series for a season or two, like how that would have been an outcome. 'Cause I thought that would have been a good idea.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's potentially enough. There's enough material there that the romance between the time when Belle shows up and the time that she says "I love you" at the end, that's supposed to take like the better part of a year. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff we just skimmed right over. So
well,
I don't know if you could sustain it, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a couple of episodes worth.
Oh yeah, hey, I tell you, I'll write a treatment and I'll send it to Disney. Be like, hey, I got an idea for Beauty and the Beast for a TV series.
That's an idea.
But it has to be 2D. It can't be 3D. It gotta be 2D like it was when it came out.
Right.
What about Hunchback though? Is there a scene that stands out or a favorite song with Hunchback?
Okay, I think the song that I like is Heaven's Light. It's the one that comes right before Hellfire. It's when Quasimodo's like he's singing about, that I was never meant for anything. But then Esmeralda came along, suddenly an angel smiled at me, and recalling her mercy and her kindness and how maybe his life is a little better now. And it's such a sweet song. The scene I just love, it's the rescue at the end. Not so much the fight afterwards, but when Quasimodo breaks out of the chains in the gallery of the cathedral, swings down, over the crowd, pulls Esmeralda off of the fire, and climbs up the cathedral. Ending with him holding her and saying "Sanctuary." That's, to me, that's why we made the movie right there.
Yeah. I remember as a kid being intrigued by that. Like, wow, Disney did it again. Like, how did they come up with all that? I mean, he broke, like you say, he swung. He did like a Tarzan thing. He swore down, saved Esmeralda, and then they went climbing up there. And the camera panned the audience as they're going up.
It's going around, yeah. And James Baxter, who was our lead on Quasimodo, I think he said that was his favorite Quasimodo scene too, because he's like climbing up, and as he's going up, he's looking down, at the crowd, like under his arm as he's going back up. And he said that's his King Kong moment. And we thought, oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. The memories and the days, man.
Yeah.
So talk about Atlantis. That movie, I have a couple memories on. I know Michael J. Fox was the voice of the main star, and that came out in 2001. Talk about that.
I mean, that was after Hunchback of Notre Dame. We took some time off. We were like taking it easy. Probably a little too easy. We were just like sitting around drawing pictures and like not working as hard as we could. We're kind of sitting on our laurels, which you could argue is like, well, you can do that a little bit, but we didn't really. We were kind of unfocused. We were just doing like whatever. Somebody come, hey, can you do some storyboards for us? Yeah, sure. Do some gag work here. Yeah, whatever.
Right.
But it was Don that came in and said, okay, look, guys, you guys are directors, and if you want to do another film, we should probably think about what it is ourselves and tell the studio before they tell us, because they're gonna give you another film, but you want to decide what it is rather than have them put you on something.
Right.
And we thought, okay. So I mean, that's the popular story is that Kirk and Don and Tab Murphy, the writer, and myself went to a little Mexican restaurant in Burbank. And over the course of like, I don't know, anywhere between 4 and 6 hours, like tons of chips and salsa and nachos and margaritas, we came up with it. And this is absolutely true. That's exactly what happened. But thinking about, well, what do we want to do? Do we want to do another musical? We've done a couple of musicals and, we did okay. My dirty secret is I don't really like musicals.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
It's okay.
What are you gonna do? I mean,
It's okay.
I'll say I like some musicals.
Mhm.
I don't generally like them, as a genre. I don't go out of my way to see them. Um, there's a few that I genuinely like,
Right.
but mostly I don't care for them.
Mhm.
Most, and usually because a lot of them do what Howard told us absolutely don't do. When your characters are, when they start singing, it should be part of the story. Don't stop the story to have a song. And so many musicals do that. They're just like, oh, it's time for a song, and everything stops, and they sing. And Howard was very adamant, and we learned this. Is like, no, it should be driving the story forward, and you can get a lot of information out in the song that you can't just in regular dialogue.
Right.
People singing can say things that you would never say, just out loud in dialogue. You'd sound ridiculous.
Right.
That's your inner, like I said, he taught us a lot. But we were seeing, musical after musical after musical come out of the studio, and we said, well, let's try something different. And it came out that we all liked the old Walt Disney live action things like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and Island at the Top of the World, and all the adventure stuff
Right.
from like the late 50s, early 60s. So what if we did something like that? What could we do? And Journey to the Center of the Earth came up, and so we read that and found out, well, it's not that interesting a book. It's a great idea, but the story itself, I mean, to follow that story, they never get there, and a lot of the time
Right.
they're in the dark, and it's a lot of internalizing. It's not as exciting as you'd think.
Mhm.
So we said, well, we can take the idea. They can go underground. What do they find? Are they going to get to the center of the Earth, the molten core, or what are they going to do? What if we put Atlantis in there? What if they find Atlantis? And so that's kind of where that came out. It's like, oh yeah, that's kind of a cool idea. And then we kind of hit on the time period that we liked. That like just prior to World War One. Where the world is changing from like horse and buggy to automobiles, and like flying machines are just starting to make an appearance. But there's still, you still have mounted cavalry, like going up against armor. So it's a really weird time. It's a really interesting time. And we
Right.
thought we can really run with that. And then it was just, then it was just nailing it down. Tab wrote some drafts, and we added stuff in, and our first version was way too long.
Really.
We called it the Monster Parade because there's a couple of creatures that you see in there. Like at one point Milo's pointing to a cave, and this giant bug comes out, and he goes, "Oh, he's holding the book upside down. Go to the other way." We had a lot more of that kind of stuff. A lot more extended scenes, and we had our first screening with those, and Tom and Peter said, no, we can't make this.
Right.
It's too expensive. It's not interesting enough. It's just, the same over and over. And so I'm pretty sure it was Don that said, well, let's focus on Atlantis. We don't get there soon enough. Let's get to Atlantis sooner. I'm sure you've heard the story about, the original opening with the Vikings.
No, I didn't know about that.
Oh, okay. There is on the special features version of the DVD. There's the original opening, which it opened with a Viking longboat speaking Icelandic, with subtitles, and they're looking for the portal to Atlantis with the Shepherd's Journal, and the Leviathan comes out and pulls the ship down and just blows the hell out of it.
Wow.
And we got that all the way done, like in color and everything. We hired, I think, all 3 Icelandic actors in Los Angeles at the time, and so they did the whole crew. Our linguist said Icelandic is the closest pure language, that was what the Vikings would have spoken.
Right.
So yeah, we recorded it, we did it, and then it's just not working. And John Sanford said, you just don't care about him. You're focusing on the wrong thing. we should be, what about seeing Atlantis like before the fall? And we're like, oh, that's interesting. And so you get to see Kida as a little girl, and you get to see her father. You get to see Atlantis in its prime,
Right.
like the day it blew. So you connected a little bit more.
Yeah. The thing about Atlantis I like is, of course, y'all, like I said earlier, y'all had Michael J. Fox come on board as his character because I'm a fan of his. And I forget her name though. She was the character that had the blue overalls that was like, you flinch, boom, boom.
Oh, Jacqueline Overdose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked her.
She was terrific.
Yeah. And I liked how y'all had the whole opening where like it was like a university, people was walking by, and it was like Milo was so determined to find Atlantis. He was like, I'm going to find Atlantis regardless. And even though it seemed like his crew toward the end didn't believe in it, they finally did, and they found Atlantis. And then I liked the movie though. I really did. And y'all had a character, Joshua Sweet, Sweet.
Yep. Dr. Sweet.
Yeah. What was up with the character though? I thought he was like a half human, half animal because he would sniff and would eat certain things.
Moliere.
Yeah.
He was human. He was just really odd.
Yeah, he was
I mean, they called him Mole, for short for Moliere, but because he liked to dig. But yeah, I mean, he was just. We went through a lot of iterations and design on him, and I think it was Mike Mignola who came up with, that kind of hunched over with the specialty, hat helmet thing he had, with the lights and the gears and all that on it. And we went, oh, that's cool, because he's just like so focused on on minerals and dirt, and and then between our writers, and I think Tony DeRosa was the Moliere lead, and Corey Burton, who did the voice.
Right.
They just, it just goes up a notch. When you give it to these guys that are that good, and they just go, do you mind if we make him like a little weirder? It's like, yeah, make him weirder. Go, dude. Let's see what it looks like.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah. I mean, the worst that can happen, we go, nope, too far. We pull it back a little bit. But when you let these guys who are that good run with an idea, who knows what they're going to come up with? And a lot of times they come up with great stuff.
Absolutely. Did you ever meet or interact with Frank Wells or Michael Eisner, who was working at Disney at the time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Met with both of them pretty frequently on Beauty and the Beast, and I told you earlier about when Beauty broke 100 million. We were so happy. Don and Kirk and I ran out and bought a bottle of champagne, and we were going to storm Michael Eisner's office and go, "Yay, we broke $100 million!" And we're going to go into his office, and we're all full of ourselves and running up there, and we get to his outer office where his secretary is, and she goes, "Hold it, just stop right there." And we're like, "You don't understand. We made $100 million. Let us in." And she was like, "No, you guys have to stop right there." And we're like, "Oh," we were just like cooling our heels out in the hallway. And 15 minutes later, it's unconscionable. The door opens up, and these two giant guys in like Armani suits come out, and they're like shaking hands with Eisner, and they leave. They were from the Vatican, and we're like, "Oh." Can we come in now?
Well, y'all didn't know that he was in the meeting.
No, well, we knew he was in a meeting. We didn't know what, and we didn't know. We couldn't fathom anything more important than $100 million. He's like talking with the goddamn Vatican. So, all right,
Oh, man.
all right. Yeah, that put us at our place really quick. So, but yeah, then he let us in, and Frank came in. I don't know, about 5-10 minutes later, and he had just sponsored a bill in Congress, some environmental bill that had passed. So he was in a good mood, and he goes, "Give me that bottle. These guys don't drink," because Michael and Jeffrey, neither one of them drank, but but Frank said, "Yeah, I'll take
Never
that."
knew
Yeah.
that. Wow. You know, it's funny. I remember telling Don Hahn this story when Lion King came out, because, you know, as a kid, I didn't know who these guys were. I didn't know who Frank Wells was. But if you look at the movie when it came on tape, when he died, it said memory of Frank Wells. I'm like, who the heck is Frank Wells? You know, he must have worked at Disney, related to somebody. And I found out years later who he was. And, you know, he and Michael and Jeffrey, I guess compared to before that, when it was Ron Miller, Walt's nephew, that was a powerhouse of talented executives who came in and shook up the place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They kind of, you know, there was a time, I guess in the mid to late 80s, when Disney came a lot closer to being liquidated than a lot of people think, with the the whole corporate raiding and hostile takeovers and green mail and all that. And there were people that were circling Disney that wanted to just cut it up and sell it off for parts.
Right.
And it was Eisner and Wells who came in with the backing of the Bass brothers, these billionaire Texans who helped fund it, and Roy Disney, who came in and said, "No, we're gonna save it."
Yeah. Well, Gary, these are your top 3 moments here. This is something new I added to my new show. The first one that I asked all my guests, what kind of music do you like?
I'm all over the map on music. I mean, I really am. When I'm writing, I can't listen to anything with lyrics because it will just like distract, and I'll start listening to the lyrics and I can't write. So it's like light classical, it's like just kind of background bed. But when I'm like driving or listening to stuff, electro swing.
Okay. I got a like for classical. Fantasia was something I adored as a kid. Yeah. Favorite Disney movie?
Favorite Disney movie. And I can't pick anyone of my own because that would just be like way too self-serving. I kind of vacillate over the years. I swing back and forth between Jungle Book and Alice in Wonderland.
I love Jungle Book.
Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland, I told somebody.
I like it for its weirdness, because it's just like so strange. But Jungle Book, I mean, I was just listening to King Louis' song like yesterday. I just like pulled that up on YouTube. It's like, I love that. Was it Louis Prima who did the voice of that? It was like, oh God, I love that song.
Yeah, I love Jungle Book. Jungle Book. And I was going to say, it's not that I didn't love Alice in Wonderland. I liked it, and that whole number with Sterling Holloway as the cat.
Mm-hmm.
I used to tell people, but it's kind of depressing because toward the end, before the Queen scene, she gets lost in the woods and starts crying, and everybody else is crying with her. I'm like, this is a little depressing, but it had adventurous moments in there. And of course, I love the Queen when she kept saying, "Oh, with her head," she said it over and over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't forget that older Disney films had like these heavy moments in them, because we would do moments in Hunchback or Beauty that were like kind of hard to watch, and we'd have people go, "How could you do that in a Disney film?" And we'd say, "Have you never seen Bambi?" So
right.
Yeah, or Dumbo, or just like any of these. There's like tragedy in some of those. So
yeah. If because you've had quite a career with what you've done over the years with these movies. Had this not happened, what career you think you would have done?
Well,
you've been a singer.
Might have tried to make the architecture thing work. Boy, I don't know. I like, and I've always liked, working with my hands and building things, making, just like making things, generally things to play with. So, like I don't want to say I'd be a toy maker, but I'd probably be a toy maker.
Okay, so you would be the male version from the Great Mouse Detective. The father mouse who was the toy maker.
Yeah. Or one of Santa's elves, one of those. So.
So you worked on Shrek the Halls.
I did.
Was that so? That was with DreamWorks with Jeffrey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that like working on? I mean, obviously Shrek the first one was this huge hit, and then they did Shrek 2, and then they did Shrek the Halls afterwards.
Right.
Being,
It was like well underway. I had been working on something else and had been brought in to do just storyboards for it.
right.
And the previous version was kind of spinning out of control, and just it had to do with Santa's list and ogres always being on the naughty list just because they're ogres, and it was like this prejudicial thing that like, well, not all ogres are bad, so Donkey and Puss fly to the North Pole and try to get Shrek's name on the good list, the nice list. And it just got so involved and complicated and expensive. And one of the other story guys and myself, Sean Bishop, we were like, I know what this really needs to be. I mean, this isn't it, but you want a Christmas special. And so we said, well, what if we just write it? And so he and I like sat down one day, and in the course of a day, like from like 9 a.m. to about 2 a.m., we wrote the whole thing. Mostly it was me typing while Sean just like channeled all the characters, and acted it out in my office. And I was just like, wait, slow down. But yeah, we wrote the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, then we were like, okay, send. And, the next day they read it. They knew we were going to do it. They said, yeah, go ahead, give it a shot.
Right.
They read it and they went, all right, good news, bad news. Good news is we like it. Bad news is you have to make it now. So we were like, okay. so yeah, that's how that happened. And, of course there were rewrites and revisions and all that, but basically that's how that started. We just said, this needs to be more focused on, on Christmas and, family and, what Christmas means to people rather than this weird kind of offshoot, going this other direction.
Right. So what was it like working with Jeffrey again? I mean, I guess you might have had the feeling of, well, I know what Jeffrey looks for in making movies, so I guess, make it like,
It was both a little easier and a little stranger, because we hadn't been together for a few years. And I mean, part of it was like, I've worked with him for like 10 years. I do kind of know him a little better than, a lot of these people around. But at the same time, it was like, hey, it's Jeffrey, and he's got a new empire and a new, a new kingdom, of people that I've got to kind of fit into, because it's the vibe at DreamWorks was different than that of Disney. So, it was like, okay, how do I fit myself into this?
Okay. And you also worked on, and I gotta say, I've never seen it, Kung Fu Panda.
I worked on it and got my ass kicked off of it. So it didn't work out. It didn't work out. Yeah, I mean, I was one of the first directors on the first Kung Fu Panda, and I was on it for a while, and they did a clean sweep of, the directors, the producer, and they replaced us all. Mm-hmm. And, and it came out great. The new guys did a great job. So we were just not giving them what they wanted to see.
Okay.
And at the time I learned this is like 90% of DreamWorks films. This is how it works. The original director has about a 10% chance of finishing the film. So it makes me feel slightly less stupid, but not totally.
What do you well, I guess it's odd to say because they were movies, but where do you think your characters are doing today? Belle and Beauty, Quasimodo, Milo. What do you think they're doing today in 2021 if their lives have kept going in animation land?
Kept going in animation. Well, difficult to say. I mean, probably the easiest one to guess would be the Atlantis crew, because they've all got those little crystals that make them basically immortal now. And we had thought of ideas for sequels, and the studio had thought of their own versions as well. And to be fair, the studio's ideas were kind of cool. It was like they reassembled the group, and taking the idea that Atlantis was this nexus, this hub civilization that everything kind of branched off and became, this crew was going to like investigate, all these different like offshoots and like weird legends of different civilizations.
Right.
And that's it was kind of an X Files, with these kind of steampunk cartoon guys. So that sounded kind of fun. With on flying stone fish. Hunchback, boy, I don't know where that would go. It's like elderly Quasimodo sitting in front of the fireplace, telling stories of his youth and depressing childhood. I wouldn't want to go there. Belle and the Beast, like, gosh, I mean, I don't really care for sequels that it's like, oh, we're going to tell about their kids now. It's like,
right. I've often had an idea where like I used to think like, well, if they did like a years later project to where they are like 10 years later or 5 years later, kind of like what you were saying, they would probably have kids or talking to the kids, and it would be a mystery where we would find out what Beast's real name is and where did he come from. I mean, I know y'all talked a bit about it in the original movie, like how he became the Beast, but where did he come from, his parents, if he had siblings, what is his actual name?
Right.
And would Robbie Benson, who has this calm voice, actually do the "I'll break down the door"? Because his voice is so calm. I'm like, Robbie Benson.
Yes, and that was the thing. When they cast him, I think it was Albert Tavares who was our casting agent at the time, and we had been like looking and looking and looking for a voice for Beast. Like so many, we hired one guy, and that didn't work out.
Right.
And Kirk and I had just like kind of given up, and we're doing other meetings, and Albert is still reading guys, and he comes running up to us one afternoon and said, "Guys, I've got Robbie Benson." And Kirk and I like look at each other, and Kirk goes, "You mean Ice Castle's Robbie Benson?"
Right.
Like, yeah. So yeah, we were skeptical too, and then we heard him, and he said, "Yeah, just ask my daughter how my voice can go." So when Dad gets mad,
man, I'm telling you, when I found out years later, when I was looking into the history of the movies, that it was him, I was like, Robbie Benson, but his voice is so calm, picturing him doing the whole "I'll break down the door," and then the scene where he was like, "Go ahead and starve," and get out.
Times that we would like mix in, like when he did like a roar, it wasn't him just going "rawr," we would mix in like a bear growl, but we didn't pitch him or anything like that. So I mean, that's what people go, "Oh no, this can't possibly be. He doesn't have that deep a voice." It's like, yeah, he kind of does. But just to give him that, that real Beast quality, like when he's roaring, he's got the wolf, in the forest, and he roars at it. That's not him. No, it's like a
and Paige O'Hara I adore. She has the most calmest, sweetest voice. She did just wonders as Belle.
Yeah. She's got almost like a Judy Garland quality to her. I mean,
right.
It's really something.
Yeah. So Gary, what is there anything going on that the fans can look forward to you doing this year, 2021, other than surviving the COVID world that everybody's in right now?
Yeah, I've got a few things, like I'm fingers in like several things. There's a couple projects of my own I'm trying to get off the ground. I'm working on. I mean, a lot of these, it's contingent on whether they sell, to studios and they want to produce them, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm working on them, but they're not. They're in the writing and scripting and like early design phase, and not production yet because I'm not paying for it myself. I did have an idea for, a self-produced thing, but I'm not really going to go into that at this point. It's like kind of a YouTube thing.
Right.
These others, like a couple original stories, a Christmas story, and then there's a few others, that I can't really talk about just because they're not sold and they're kind of proprietary. One of them that I really, really, really liked, I don't think is going to happen now because of what happened on January 6th. And, some of the characters involved in the story were like kind of edgy and not so funny anymore. So, yeah.
Yeah. I got to tell you real quick, though, Jungle Book and the 101 Dalmatians and Lady the Tramp would be my first top favorite Disney films. When you guys were there in the 90s when I was growing up, I loved Oliver and Company as well as Aladdin and Hunchback and Beauty. And Mary Poppins is my favorite live action movie that Disney has done.
The first one or the more recent one?
The first one, the 60s one. Yeah.
That's the first movie I saw in a theater when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
Like 65, I think. Parents took me to a theater for the first time, and it was Mary Poppins.
Yeah. I got 5 more questions for you, then I'm gonna let you go. The first one is, do you ever see Disney doing a movie with Mickey or any character and mixing it with Bugs Bunny or any other Looney Tunes character?
You mean other than like another Roger Rabbit kind of thing?
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there was a Roger Rabbit 2 at one point. It was like kind of an origin of, Roger Rabbit and how he got into movies and all that.
Right.
I think that had, the Warner Brothers characters as well. I don't know, because it comes down a lot of times to the legal teams, and literally, when in Roger Rabbit, when Mickey and Bugs were when they were platform diving, when they were skydiving, that was the solution they got to because they had to have the legal agreement was they had to have exactly equal time as each other.
Right.
So like, all right, they're both going to be skydiving off a building. They're both platform diving, and so they're both like kind of just like floating in the air.
And that was the worst. I mean, I'm not saying the worst scene, but the worst. Bob is falling from. He's falling to his life, and they're
just like chatting. Yeah, they don't care.
Yeah, they asked him for a parachute.
Yeah.
Oh man, and I remember telling Nick Ranieri this when I interviewed him. I was like, "Yo, how the heck did Roger get a girl like Jessica? That fine babe. Like, how did he get something like that?"
Make her laugh.
Two opposites, man.
Yeah.
My second question is, what advice would you give somebody trying to get into animation or filmmaking in general?
I'd say, I mean, in animation, as a practical matter, learn the technology. Learn how to do it digitally. There are animators and really, really top flight animators who say you can't really animate digitally until you learn how to with 2D. And that's true. I mean, get your drawing skills and expressions and body language and all that. But learn the technology because that's where the industry is and is likely to keep going. 2D isn't dead, but it's not mainstream anymore. So, keep that in mind as you're studying. And then, like I said, work on your drawing. I mean, an animator that I worked with, Ron Husband, he was a guy who he was at Disney before me, and he was an animator, and he was like always a solid like kind of B player. It's like he was good but not great. but he always was drawing, always working, always like practicing and trying to refine his art. And
Right.
like to the point where, a 15-minute break, you'd see Ron out on a bench, like just sketching. Lunch hour, he's sketching, just drawing and drawing and drawing.
Right.
And we worked with him a few times over the years. And then suddenly, and he was like in his 50s, I think, it was like a light switch went off and he like became great. Whatever breakthrough there was, it happened. And this happens to people. And so this is the thing. Keep trying. If you're not happy with what you're doing, if you don't think it's good enough, just keep doing it. Keep trying, keep practicing, because there is a switch somewhere in there that will flip.
You're absolutely right. It's one of those sayings, at first, if you don't succeed, try and try again. And the more you do it, the more you'll get better at it. Yeah.
Well, Ron had asked me, a few years ago, he's like, why did you guys finally give me the break? And I told him that story, because he said, honestly, we thought you were okay, but all of a sudden you became great, and I know that's why it was, because he was always, always, always working at it.
Right. My third question to you is, do you have any plans to do anything with live action, or are you going to stay with animation right now?
Live action is interesting. And if something came along, I'm sure I wouldn't say no, but it's not my strong suit. It's not what I've studied or what I know. I mean, I kind of have some confidence that I could do okay, but it's all the tools and the moving pieces that, that I'm not familiar with. I can make decisions that will get up on the screen, and people have asked, what's the difference between directing animation and directing live action? And it took me a long time to figure it out. It's like, well, there's no difference at all, and it's completely different. That's the short answer. Completely different in that, one set uses pencils and paper and paint or digital, pixels, and the other uses people and locations and costumes and that.
Right.
But it's the same, because you're still making choices that have to go up on screen. Whether your character is drawn sad or you're telling an actor to act sad, you need a sad actor you need a sad character on the screen. Whether you're painting it for night or whether you're shooting it for night, all the same choices have to be made. It's just how you get to them.
Absolutely.
Having said that, I'm not that familiar with the live action thing. I've very, very, very limited experience in that. So
that's okay.
I wouldn't say no, but I'm not holding out hope.
I gotta tell you though, real quick though, that because I grew up in the 2D era, I was a little disappointed when Disney did the shift, because I always felt like 3D was more for Pixar. Disney was known for just doing the 2D like they've done for years. So I was a little disappointed when that switch happened, but I guess that's kind of the new thing now, and 3D animation has just taken over now with them and DreamWorks and everybody else.
It's and it's kind of too bad, because they tend to all. I mean, DreamWorks did a conference some years ago where they said, so we're gonna look at 30 seconds of all the new films that have come out like the past couple of years. This was a few years back, but It was like Madagascar and Teenage Ninja Turtles and just all these movies like back to back to back, and you got to seeing it's like, okay, so there's like art direction differences and stylistic differences, but it's all digital. It's all that same, kind of lush lighting, photorealistic. It's it's like all looks the same. And then the Simpsons movie came on, and everybody went, oh, something looks different. It literally popped, and it was like, God, that was refreshing to see.
So I guess this might fall into my second question, but my fourth question to you, I'm kind of a producer myself. I've made some short films since I was in school. I'm actually doing my first documentary that's going to come out this year. To my question to you is that I asked a lot of producers and directors, what is the fun part of producing and directing, and what is the challenge of doing that?
Well, all right. The fun part is the rap party afterwards when you get when you get to get drunk with the crew.
Right.
Yeah. And it challenges everything leading up to that. No. So, I mean, for me, the fun part for animation is watching it go from stage to stage to stage. Because it's usually so compartmentalized. I don't know if you've been working in 2D or 3D, but I mean it's really applies to both. But I'll say it for 2D because it's my language skills are better there. So you start out with storyboards, right? And you're looking at storyboards, and then you cut them into a story reel. And at first you're like, oh, this is pretty cool. This is better than reading a script for crying out loud. And you can see it. You're putting temporary music and temporary voices, and and you hone it and you work it, and it's like you're getting sick of it. And then you get the actual voices, like, oh, it sounds better. Oh, this is okay, not bad. And then you're working out for a while, for months, to the point where you're just sick of it. And then the first animation comes in, and the characters are moving. That scene moves, and it's rough and it's scratchy, but it's moving. And then more and more that comes in, and it just takes a jump up. It's like from the storyboards, which when you first saw them were awesome, but now you're just so tired of them, and now it's moving, and with the real voices, and then it gets cleaned up, and you see, oh, that's what it's going to look like. And then it goes in color, and it's like, wow, it takes another jump up. You got color backgrounds and color characters, special effects, the real music, instead of the temp music that you've been using all this time. You've got, if you're using composed music, or if you've bought rights to music for needle drop or whatever, it just keeps going up and up. And that's really kind of the exciting part, is watching it grow, watching it take that step up each time.
Right.
The challenging part is, I mean, quite literally getting it there, like dealing with all the notes, dealing with all the people, dealing with the story problems. You're going to hit problems that you just like, what do I do? How do I get out of this? This isn't logical, but if I do this, that's going to pull this thread. And if I do this, it's going to pull that thread. And yeah, story is probably the most challenging. Yeah. Getting the story to work. It's not getting the actors to act, because they're going to do it. The actors are usually like really professional and really good, and you give them the right motivation and the right direction, and they're gonna give you what they want. Same with the animators. It's you're dealing with professionals and artists and who are really good at what they do. I learned early on, let them do. Don't micromanage them, and they will make you look good. They'll do their best. They're happier when you don't micromanage, and they'll make you look good. But it's story that's the trick, and that was Roy Disney's thing. He said the three most important things is story, story, and story. And
that's right.
He's right. It ain't easy.
Now, this was not my last question, but I forgot to ask you this earlier. Do you watch football? Are you?
Yeah.
What team are you?
I was really hoping for Kansas City. I was hoping Mahomes would do it, and his offensive line was just not there. They were just. I think it was like injuries and COVID and everything, and he had like third string line that just wasn't giving him time, and yeah, I was really hoping for him.
Right.
They are legitimately one of my favorite teams and have been for years. A number of years ago, they had like their business model was they were picking up players that were kind of a little bit past their prime.
Right.
Just they're a little bit older. Other teams are starting to let them go, but these guys were superstars, a few years back.
Right.
They still had some good years left in them. Not as many, but a year, 2 years, 3 years. And so Kansas City had like some great games with these great older players. And I always admired that about them.
Yeah. Well, my official last question to you is, and I've enjoyed talking to you today. If you were to make a movie about your life, who would you want to play you?
I'm going to say Adam Savage.
Okay.
Because he's the one that people tell me, you guys look kind of alike. So
Well, you have to let Adam know, if he's going to play you, the early you, he has to get his hair just like you did. That ponytail, it has to match the orange hair, the ponytail, the
Yeah,
glasses, it
yeah,
all has to
he
match.
could pull it off.
Man, well, Gary, you've had quite a career. A lot of the movies that you've done has touched a lot of people, including me. I thank you for that. How would you like to be remembered by, though? I mean, you've had quite a career on your hands.
Remembered. I mean, being remembered one way or another isn't that much of a priority to me. If my name is still on the film, when they play it, 10, 15, 50 years from now, great. That's I don't need I don't need much more than that.
And do your kids plan on joining Disney at some point, being animators, producing?
My older son, he's in the animation business. He does storyboards, and he's like right now kind of bouncing around doing like freelance gigs here and there. My younger son is in the healthcare business, so
Okay.
he's in physical therapy. So
Yeah. Well, thank God for he's in the field, and hopefully tell him to come up with a good cure to save the world, and tell him to push the government for another stimulation check.
yeah, I'll work on it. I can just imagine his answer. It'll be like,
well, Gary, thank you for coming aboard my podcast. I've enjoyed talking to you. I always enjoy talking to people that worked at Disney, as I'm sure you found out today, because again, you guys were a part of my childhood. I love Disney. I still do. I have to confess, I haven't kept up with a lot of the new stuff. I haven't seen Tangled or anything like that, but the older ones, I guess, because that was my generation more.
uh-huh.
I loved, adored, and I thank you for what you did and making those movies come to pass. And I don't know how close you are with Kirk now, but I would love to do a show with the two of y'all someday. Well, maybe later this year.
I'm in contact with him. I'm not in real frequent contact, but we're still friends. And whenever we get together, it's like we were never apart. So I can mention it. Timing permitting, I don't imagine it'll be too much of a problem.
Okay.
I'll see what I can do now that I've put it out there and put him on the spot.
Well, Gary, thanks for coming aboard. Y'all stay safe out there. I told the people from Disney that I've had on, I hope to someday come to California, because I would love to meet you guys. It'd be a treat. And see how it's like living out in California. As you can see right now, it's getting dark here in Baltimore.
Yeah. Or I'd just be glad you're not in Dallas right now. So
yeah.
I've got friends there, and it's seen better days. So
yeah. Well, Gary, thanks for coming aboard. You stay safe, man, and enjoy the rest of your day. Talk to you soon.
All right. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
No problem, man. Take care.
Right.
Well, guys, thanks for tuning in for another day with Slick. Better you. This is your host, Ranger Matt. Join me again next time for my the next guest that I have coming aboard. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did, because I love Disney. A big Disney fan, Disney geek. As you can see, it's getting a little pitch black here, so I need to add some white here and remove my Humphrey Bogart hat. But stay tuned. Be safe. God bless.